Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Life and the City, podcast by Star Media Group. With me today again is my co-host Farid Wahab, and we are excited to be back for the second episode, aren't we, Farid?
Yes, Aida, we are absolutely thrilled to be here again today. And today we are bringing in a journalist from StarMetro, Shalini Ravindran, to talk and discuss about an important issue. Can you get us up to speed, Aida?
Yes, Shalini is one of our colleagues at the StarMetro desk, and like the rest of us, we often report on local government issues, one of which is a hot topic right now, which is the review of the assessment tax, right, Shalini?
Hey guys, first of all, I'd like to say it's definitely a change from our usual speed of things where we are behind the scenes. So it's quite interesting to be here with you guys today.
Yes, and we are very happy to have you here in our discussion today, right?
Definitely.
Yes.
Why don't you tell us a bit about the area that you cover and the topics that you cover and which you report on in StarMetro?
Okay, so I've been with StarMetro for about 11 years now. Always with the Metro desk, and as you may have read in our StarMetro daily pullout, we cover a lot of local government issues, anything to do with your local councils, neighborhood issues. I'm there.
Yeah, so are we, right?
Yes, we do. All of us do.
So typically my main areas that I cover are Ampang Jaya and as well as Kuala Lumpur. But of course we cover the whole of Klang Valley as well.
That's right, yeah.
Okay, Shalini, we actually have prepared a number of questions that we're hoping to discuss, and we're hoping by bringing you here with us, you can also shed light based on your experience covering these issues before. Before we get to the crux of the issue, maybe you can tell our listeners a little bit about what is an assessment tax?
Okay, so essentially it's revenue for your local council.
That's right.
It's the money that they need, that they collect, that they need to maintain the area of governance, from cleaning your roads, fixing your lights, to building and maintaining parks.
Yeah.
This is where the money goes to. And it's collected from every property owner, residential, commercial, factories, and it's paid twice a year.
Right. So yes, property owners are the ones paying the assessment tax.
That's right.
And how much do they usually pay?
Each property is different. Of course, there is a sort of a baseline. It's based on the property type, whether it's for business, for agriculture. It's based on that. And then if you say do renovations or extensions, these are also added to your assessment tax.
Shalini, I understand in the past people normally had to go to a physical counter to pay their assessment tax, but it has been pushed by local authorities recently to digitize services. So
That's right.
where can people pay? Do they have to pay physically, or do they only have the online option? And how about the bills? Do they get the bills in physical forms, or have they all gone paperless nowadays?
Okay, for Selangor, for example, there has been a major push towards digitalisation. So everything's going paperless. It started with, say, maybe a couple of years ago, where councils said they would not be sending bills, physical bills, to the properties, and everyone had to register online to get their bills. And right now, there's many avenues to pay. A lot of them actually have their own websites or mobile apps to make it easier for people to pay. Service at the counter is for when you have a problem, you can't find your bill, or you're not getting your bill, for example. That's when you go to the counters.
So ratepayers have options between physical and online payments, right?
Most of them don't have that option.
Okay.
It's the first, the only option is actually online.
Okay.
It's only when you have an issue, then you go to the counter.
Okay.
That's right. I remember when the council switched to the paperless system.
That's right.
And even I, who used to receive the bill via regular mail, right? I noticed suddenly I didn't get my bill. Then I realized, oh, they've gone paperless.
Yeah.
So, like you said, you download the app, log on, and view the bill. which I did, but we received a lot of feedback from mostly senior citizens who inadvertently defaulted their payments because
They
they didn't receive the physical bill, and they had some challenges downloading the app, logging
Yeah.
on, and all that nitty-gritty stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was rather unfortunate that there were people who defaulted in their payment. So what happens when someone defaults in their assessment payment?
Okay, it's councils don't go to the extreme measure
Yeah.
right off the bat, right? So they're going to send you notice. They may come and visit you at your house or send you letters, physical letters, to say that, hey, you have an outstanding amount, please pay. It's when those notices are ignored, that's when they have avenue to take further action. Okay?
Correct. Yeah.
So the most extreme measure that they could do is to come to your house or property and take seize assets that's equivalent to the amount that's owed.
And that's movable assets, right?
Movable assets, that's right. Typically, they don't go to this measure unless it's more of a deterrent or you really have a very big outstanding amount.
Yeah. Recently, several local councils have announced their plan to re-evaluate the assessment rates for properties under the jurisdiction, which might see the fees increased. And it's general knowledge now that the fees might be increased up to 25%, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so the Selangor State Exco reportedly approved of this exercise on December 6 last year.
Indeed, Aida. Apparently, I read, in StarMetro reports that for many councils, the last evaluation was actually done between 2 to 4 decades ago, which is, a
Yeah.
long time ago, in fact. However, I think it's important for us to note that the new proposed rates will still have to be presented to the State Exco for approval prior to implementation. And we have some questions here that we would like to discuss with Shalini. Shalini, Aida has said something about, they might property owners might see an increase in their assessment rate. So how much is the increment that we're talking about exactly?
Okay, before the Selangor government came up with, say, a capping of 25%, properties were seeing, say, about 70 to 150%
Okay.
an increase. But this is based on the property evaluation itself. Okay, so because they have not done it for many, many years, the property has increased in value, or most
Yeah.
properties have increased in value,
Yeah, that's
which affects the rate or quantum of the assessment itself. So we were reporting people having notices about 70%, up to, say, I would say 200% is the most that I saw. So, but these were larger properties, say empty lots, factories. They were the most affected in terms of the jump
Right.
or the hike.
Okay.
But of course, everyone was affected,
Okay.
and the government, Selangor government, said, okay, we will have a maximum cap of 25% from the current or old rate of assessment tax, which does allow for a little bit of leeway, but it's still, for a lot of people, quite a large figure or
Yeah, it
a
is.
large jump,
Yeah.
So we will see what they decide to do.
I understand from a report that was done by you in StarMetro saying that this 25% cap applies to unmodified strata properties. But how about strata properties that have been modified or even landed homes? Has the council been clear about where they're going with this?
Okay, some have been quite clear in
Okay.
terms of which type of property can benefit from the maximum cap. But some have just come up with a blanket a statement saying it's 25% maximum. So does it also apply to factories? Does it also apply to commercial properties? That has not been made very clear.
Yeah.
So it could be up to property owners who are undergoing this exercise to bring forward that query and get clarification from the councils.
Right. So in Selangor, Shalini, which councils have announced that they are going ahead with this re-evaluation exercise?
Okay, it's actually quite a number of Selangor councils. Selangor has 12 local councils and city councils. The ones that we know of is Ampang Jaya, Selayang, Shah Alam, Kuala Langat, Petaling Jaya, and I believe Kajang has already completed theirs, so theirs is already approved by the Selangor government and it took effect this year.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier, before we started the shows, that Ipoh was another
That's right.
state on another city on the list. Yeah.
That's right. So Ipoh, interestingly, they've not done it for about 43 years. But I believe they have already said that there's a cap of 30, maximum 30%.
Right.
So, yeah.
I'm sure that these councils, knowing that this could probably anger ratepayers, probably have to come up with some kind of reasons or justification as to why they are doing this.
For sure.
So, what reasons have the councils given to the people so far for conducting this exercise?
Okay. Of course, the most the reason that they've most often given is that the price of services has increased.
Yeah.
And because part of the reason is that they have not done it for so very long. Under the Local Government Act, actually, local councils can re-evaluate properties every 5 years. But this has not been done, which means that the assessment tax has stagnated for decades. And they are still working on old assessment tax to pay for new services that has where prices have hiked. Okay, so even a simple job of, say, paving the road or patching a pothole, for example, the price now compared to 15-20 years ago is very different.
Definitely increase. Yeah.
So that's the main reason that's typically given. And that they need extra source of revenue, and this is one of the ways that they can do it.
Right. So as reporters writing these stories centered around the local government and upgrading of infrastructure, for example, we've received a lot of feedback from our readers, one of which concerns simple infrastructure upgrades or what we think are simple infrastructure upgrades, like street lighting, fixing potholes like you mentioned earlier, right? So I think in one recent story, some residents were complaining about the lack of these amenities and relating that to the ominous increase in taxes that they have to fork out, right? What are some of the public complaints that you've heard of?
Okay, I would say the ones that I most frequently hear of is that the councils have not been giving services that are up to par.
Right.
It's not quality service, so why should we pay more when we have not been reaping the benefits?
Right.
Okay, that's and I guess the other reason is that it's coming at a time where everything else has increased.
Yeah.
We are seeing, diesel subsidies lifted. We are seeing jobs, people not having enough jobs around. So that contributes to the anger and the frustration that this is coming at this time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we could go on and on, because a lot of the times when we covered local councils goings on, often we are told by council officials that the reason that our service has not been up to par is because we don't have enough money to be able to carry out the service that we need to carry out. But then we have the public pushing back, saying, look, the reason we're not keen to give you more is because your service has not been up to par. So that argument goes,
It's a push and
Yes.
pull kind of thing. Yeah.
it's a catch-22 situation, as some might say it. Now, Shalini, this understandably has been a not so popular announcement. How have the local councils responded to the public anger?
I think the first sort of news that people actually got that, you know, oh, I would have to pay higher taxes, is that when they suddenly get a notice in the mail. And that's not always or necessarily the best or the easiest way to receive so-called bad news, right? So, and I think a lot of people felt that the notices that were sent
Yeah.
were confusing. It did not state the reason for doing it, and there were a lot of figures in the notices, so people were confused. Okay, how much am I exactly supposed to pay? And some thought, you know, that the new rates would kick in next month,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which was not the case. So it caught a lot of people back, and they were angry about it, which causes frustration. And then you've got a lot of different information floating around.
Yeah.
So this actually forced local councils to come up with graphics, with simple graphics. They had they opened counters at their HQ to advise people, or where people could seek clarification. And most importantly, part of the exercise also involves people sending in their objections.
Yeah.
Okay, that's an important thing we have to also talk about.
Yeah.
Once they sent the notice about the proposed new rates, proposed property evaluation, people had about 4 to 6 weeks to object if they wanted to, which many people have done. So it also allowed for a bit more communication between the two parties.
Yeah.
Before we go any further, I mean, once people send in their objections, how would the council process these objections?
Okay. Once the deadline is over, all these complaints are collated, the data is analyzed, and say if someone objects that their property should not be this rate, it is evaluated. Have they done any renovations for the past 20 years? Are they renting out the property? All these are taken into account, and a decision is made at the council level before it's then presented to the state.
Yeah, this is an important factor when it comes to putting forth your objections regarding the
Proposed,
increase,
yeah.
right? Because we carried a story today of some residents voicing their complaints about whether they were given proper notice, right? Whether the information was clear
Yes.
or confusing. And you're right, I think some of them just had a panic session about when this would be
Yeah.
implemented, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and going back to what we said earlier about everything is increasing now, and we have to face inflation as well, right? What are some of the other concerns that the residents have said about this increase?
I think the most interesting that I actually heard was the fact that, okay, yes, you say my property is now worth 2 or 3 times the amount, but it does not necessarily mean they will benefit for them.
Yeah.
Especially because if they are staying in that property, it's their only property, they're not getting any monetary benefits from it, right? They're not renting it out, they're not selling it. So where does that extra property price come in?
Yeah.
But yet they're paying more tax on it.
Yeah.
So some have actually asked or proposed that the new rates only apply for properties that secondary properties that are, you know, if it's their second home or second property, then it applies. But this would be it would be not the easiest for the council
Yeah.
to, you know,
Very difficult to implement, yeah.
case by case basis. That's may be out of their hands. So yeah.
Can we maybe, we've talked a bit about, how the councils have reacted, how the public have responded. Can we maybe, shift the discussion a little bit to about the pros and cons of, increasing the assessment tax? Either one of you can chime in.
for example, yeah, I think I can say something about that. So, where I live right now, it is close to public transport, so transit-oriented development. But it is it is what I think I could call it stagnant, because it's been like that for the last couple of decades, right? There's not going to be any more extra amenities,
Right.
from what I view as something that might increase the value, right? But value of property will increase, especially when it's near transit-oriented development, right? So I'm wondering whether the 25% is a bit steep for PJ, especially near the commercial areas. Maybe you can chime in about that, Shalini. Do you live in a similar area which is next to or nearby public transport?
Well, I live in Ampang Jaya, which is very close to the city center, but it's
Yeah.
still considered quite suburban in a way. Interestingly, for Ampang Jaya, for example, it may seem like a big area, okay, and you have a lot of properties in it, but actually 50% of the area is forested land, which
Right.
means people can't actually build more or bigger townships. So the council has to rely on the existing properties that have already been built. The 25%, it's very much dependent on the, as a personal opinion, on the individual.
Yeah.
If you're, say, staying in a 2-story house with 2 people who are earning an income, the 25% may not seem that bad. But say if you're a 1-income household, you've got dependents, maybe 4 or 5 dependents, then it's going to be a burden.
Then we'll feel the pinch.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely.
I think the way I see it is that it has been said time and again, your service quality must match the price that we are paying. So I think if and when the new rates do kick in, I think the councils really need to live up to their words and actually show,
Yes.
show an increase in the level of quality of service. Because otherwise, people will be questioning. Yes,
Yeah.
you've asked us to pay more, and now we have. Where's the improvement that you promised us?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, in my point of view, we can't really say. I mean, we can't really tell whether it's justified until it comes into effect.
That's
but
true.
but of course, until then there will be a lot of complaints. There'll be a lot of anger at this proposed assessment hike.
Yeah, that's true.
If the Selangor government goes ahead and approves the new rates, there'll be definitely a lot of expectations on your local council. It's not just gonna be, oh, now we have money to patch a pothole. No, I want extra services. We want a stadium. We want more parks, better playgrounds, for example. They're gonna have a bigger voice,
Yeah.
and as it should. If you want us to pay more, you need to up your ante.
If I can have just one more question, Shalini. I read in your report something about the MPHA president, Dr. Ani Ahmad, saying that this will increase MPHA's annual income by about
That's right. 14 million.
14 million. But
Yeah.
14 million doesn't seem that much for an area like Ampang Jaya, which is quite dense and is, I think, quite rapidly developing. A lot of new residential
That's
developments
right.
are coming up. So I do feel like even though there will be an increase, would that increase be enough to
It's
service that
not
area?
a one-time increase, right? So it's 14 million for the year.
Mhm.
On top of the current revenue that they collect, it's about 85 million. And that's just
Million?
million.
Okay.
That's right. That's their tax revenue. They also have non-tax revenue,
I see.
which comes from other investments and things like that. So, but it's a cumulative thing. Okay, 14 for the first year and then 14 the
Ah,
following
yes.
year. So it's also used. They have to roll with the money.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So, Shalini, you also cover Kuala Lumpur,
that's right.
DBKL, right?
Yes.
And that's a single local authority for KL, as KL doesn't have any local councils like Selangor. So, Did they have a similar exercise in 2013? Can you explain about that?
Yeah, they did. So, for a lot of us covering the local council at the time, it was our first time as well, trying to understand this issue as reporters and also as ratepayers. It was very much seen as a drastic measure at the time. And unlike Selangor councils now who have sort of learned a little bit from
Yeah.
the 2013 exercise, at that point, when they got the notices, it was extreme. It was about 100 to 300%.
Wow. That's,
Okay.
You
that's
know,
big.
and they
yeah.
hadn't done it for about 21 years. So, and KL properties drastically
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
increased, right? So it was even discussed in Parliament. The mayor, the Federal Territories Minister at the time, Tengku Adnan, got a lot of flack for it. And eventually, we were trying to get information as well. How did you come by this number? Is there any other plans? And eventually it was decided that they would have a capping as well.
Yeah.
I believe at the time it was about 10% for residential and 25% for commercial, which lowered the blow a little bit. But this was something that could have been avoided or not had such an extreme reaction if there was open communication, right? The DBKL should have been a bit more upfront about the way that they were doing things, have more dialogue with people and even with us
Yeah.
at the time. It was very hard to get information from them, from the minister. So, yeah.
Interesting. And a very important topic to be discussed among just everyone, right?
Yes, yes.
At this time. Going back to the increase in the assessment taxes, I understand that different councils have different deadlines for people to voice their objections.
Yes.
That's right.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, MBPJ has set its deadline, I think, early to mid-July.
Yes.
Whereas Selayang or Klang has set it until August.
Klang has said it
Klang,
until
yeah.
July 15, if I'm not
Okay.
mistaken.
Selayang has already concluded, yes, May 31st. So
Okay.
has Ampang Jaya.
Right.
So once the objection period is over, which is where you have to be cognizant of what the deadline is, then there will be actually public hearings. Okay,
Yeah.
whoever who submitted an objection, they will get a notice asking them to attend a public hearing.
Yeah.
So this is when you will be asked to, justify your reason against or for the hike, right? So that's something else that people need to look out for.
Yeah, and I think the Royal Clan Council mayor, I think she said something like, if you're going to put any objections, make it constructive, because as we have discussed, everything is going up in price, right? So we're going to just complain about it. I think that will not be useful. And going on the excuse of, I didn't know, that doesn't hold water as well, because it's general knowledge now that this is going on. You have an avenue to voice your objections, right? Yeah. And anything you want to chime in here, Farid?
I mean, at the risk of upsetting people, I do think that sometimes, when it comes to reforms, when it comes to improving services, sometimes we do have to take the unpopular measure.
Yeah.
Although I would say that there is, of course, room for improvement. So I think the local councils have shown that they are willing to listen, at least the fact that they are gathering public input.
Yeah.
But of course, ultimately, at some points, after 30, 40 years, the rate will have to increase at some points, right? It's just that how much and how are they going on about it?
I think also, we could also have a discussion about why did it take them so long to have this exercise.
Yes.
If you're saying 30, 40 years, why did it take so long? Because under the Act, you could do it every 5 years. So if you were to do it, say, within 5-10 years,
People wouldn't be so shocked.
exactly,
Yes.
the hike wouldn't
Yeah.
be so drastic, right? So why was it, you know?
I think it's one of those things that the longer you put it off, the more
Yeah.
unpopular it becomes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And it's like a shock to the system.
yeah,
The longer you put it off, and then suddenly they say we're going to increase your assessment rates by 25%. And that's a big pinch for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
This has been interesting and insightful topic for today.
Yes.
Shalini, would you like to tell our listeners anything more about this topic?
I would say, as a final thing, participate in the public hearing.
Yeah.
You know, exercise your right to object, to attend the hearings, and to put your voice. And on the council side, I would say they need to be a bit more engaged
Yeah.
with people, have a bit more open communication with them. The easiest thing to do is like to put up FAQs,
Yeah, that's
you
right.
know, or a very simple graphic about the issue, which makes it easier for people to understand.
okay.
Any parting words, Farid?
I think I've said my part.
Okay. Thank you very much, Shalini, for joining us today.
Yes.
This was fun.
Yeah,
Yes.
it has been.
Yeah.
And we look forward to seeing you guys again.
Yes, and thank you for listening, everyone. The Life and the City podcast can be viewed on www.thestar.com.my/metro.